episode 2. Now I know it seems strange considering we've done 8 videos already that this is called episode 2. Well, it's not. This is the start of episode 2. Now why are there episodes and videos is confusing. I understand, and we'll get to that. Cracked open a fresh bottle just for this one because it's a doozy. So here's the deal. There are 5 episodes in How I Toppled Western Civilization. The first one, entitled Hindsight, with the excellent intro music as you've all seen, was just that. Vaughn's Hindsight. We're into episode 2, self-titled album. This is where we really get into the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. So, with that in mind, crack yourself open your own adult beverage. I'm not going to judge, unless it's White Claw, in which case, who cares? Different strokes for different folks. At any rate, moving on with episode 2, chapter 8. Here it goes again. I guess at this point, saying it had been an eventful few days is a lot like saying the Sahara is hot. I swam back out of my drug-induced torpor the following morning, back in the Uber bedroom. I felt rested and refreshed, and my arm had been cleaned and bandaged expertly. I was laying on my side near the edge of the bed under the sheets. I could see the granite fountain wall, and the lighting told me it was probably fairly early in the morning. Hearing voices in the kitchen, I sat up and swung my legs over the side of the bed. I told myself it was time to get serious about this business, to keep a cool head, not let the last few days get to me, and perhaps most importantly, it was time to be a professional. And what sparked this new reservoir of resolve, I couldn't say. It just seemed to be the thing to do. So I pulled on a t-shirt and walked into the kitchen. I saw Evette behind the counter in her pink pajamas, and Lou was sitting at the breakfast bar with a mug of coffee. "And you're sure?" Lou said to Evette. "Yes, I told him he did fine," she answered him. "I don't know if I can keep this up, though." Lou took a sip of his coffee. "You are doing a great job. I have every confidence in you." She smiled at this. I sat down at the counter. "Morning, all." Lou grinned and patted me on the uninjured shoulder. "Good morning, Vaughn. You've had a busy trip, I hear." Evette slid a glass of OJ across the counter. I grabbed it and in 3 gulps downed half the glass. "Well, you heard right. Evette is quite the little badass, so here we are." "I'm just glad you're all right. I've been worried sick," he said. I found his paternal sentiment a little off-putting, but maybe that's because I'd only had one meeting with him up until now. "Evette will get you ready for your first day," he said simply. I considered this for a minute and came to the conclusion that throwing myself into work was the best way to put the whole surrealistic insanity behind me. I think that'd be good for me. Lou smiled and set his mug down. "Good to hear it." He left me with Evette in the kitchen. I continued to sip on my OJ for a minute. Evette set a plate of scrambled eggs and a bagel smeared with cream cheese in front of me, and I dug in without even thinking. "So, what do we have on the docket for today, my dove?" I asked her, taking another bite of eggs. She smiled a little and grabbed her phone from the counter. "We have a meeting with Mademoiselle L about your workspace, and then you have a meeting with your team over lunch. After that, it's up to you, really." Sounds simple enough. I took a look at her in her pink PJs, and another thought popped into my mind. So, don't take this the wrong way, but I haven't seen any other bedrooms around this place other than mine, and you're in your pajamas, so where do you sleep? I know what answer I wanted, but that's me, and when it comes to women, I have a fairly simple thought process. She took the bagel off my plate and took a bite, licking a smudge of cream cheese from her lips, and she answered with her mouth still full. "What do you think?" I felt my cheeks redden slightly. "Seriously? We share this place." "Americans are so prudish sometimes," she remarked. "I'm not prudish in the slightest. I just didn't expect our full relationship to be so..." She set the bagel down. "So what? Authentic?" "Among other words," I replied. She walked around the counter and stood in front of me. "Our relationship is complex. We can simplify it by not avoiding the attraction." Well, that was concise. I'd always heard Europeans were more sexually liberated than we are in the States, but when confronted with the reality, I was at a loss for how to proceed. My large catalog of skirt-chasing tactics was just thrown out the window. I ate another bite of eggs and swallowed. "Look, Evette, I won't lie to you. You're incredible. But I'm just not sure I understand how we're supposed to work together." I realized my heart was beginning to pound. I looked into her eyes, which were like sapphire pools of the most brilliant shade. I could smell her floral scent and her hair lay naturally across one side of her face. I didn't say anything for a beat. I just imagined coming off that stool, taking her in my arms, and dipping her back in one of those old movie-style kisses. So that's what I did. Felt like I'd let loose a part of myself that I always kept in check. She wrapped her arms around me and we kissed. And I'll hand it to her. She's a great kisser. What can I expect from a woman who came from the country that coined the phrase French kissing? I picked her up and we remained locked together. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I backed off just a bit to see if she'd follow, and she did. I guess she wanted me too, which made it all the easier, and for long seconds we just went at it like crazy teenagers in the kitchen. Good old-fashioned fun. Before long I did have to come up for air. I took a deep breath and said, "Was that what you were getting at?" She smiled that amazing smile and kissed me slightly on the lips again. "Yes." I went in for another kiss, but she played coy and turned away, smiling. "We have to go to work now." I smiled and followed her to the bedroom. "Wow, you sure know how to get a man ready for work," I joked. In the bedroom, she had a pair of jeans and bowling shirt ready for me on the bed, while she stepped into the bathroom so I'd get changed. I couldn't stop smiling at that point. The morning was going very, very well. I could still taste her on my lips while I pulled my jeans on. "So how does our situation work here?" I called her in the bathroom. Her voice floated out of the cracked door. "Our situation here is simple. I'm your assistant, and we're involved." I buttoned my shirt. "Well, this is all so sudden. I don't know if I'm ready for the commitment of an assistant. I'll have to check with this girl I just got involved with. You might know her about so high, French, great legs, crazy good shot, stunning blue eyes." I heard her giggle a little. "Trust me, Vaughn, it's not as much to handle as you think." I tied my shoes and shot back. "Well, I hope you're right." She came out of the bathroom wearing a white skirt and jacket over a red shirt. I guess she does pretty much everything in heels because the only time she wore shoes, they were always very high heels. They were those high fashion type strappy with white and red on the bottom. "You have to meet Mademoiselle L. Let's go," she said as she shouldered her purse. We left the apartment, which I was still having trouble grasping as my apartment. We took the elevator, and unlike the last time, she sat on one of the couches in said elevator. I did the same. We were in the elevator for a very long time, and I didn't think Paris had any absurdly tall buildings until I realized we were heading down. Entire minutes later, we stepped off the elevator into a largely wood-furnished hallway. The floors and walls were polished to a shine, but the ceiling was concrete. Right across from the elevators was a lobby desk that could have been taken from any high office building made after '98. The receptionists were both dark-haired young women who wore identical glasses. One of them looked me up and down as we approached. "Good morning, Mr. Bureau." "Good morning," I said back, forcing my head to mind its orientation, which was difficult considering how hot they were. "Yeah, like I'm not supposed to mention it." Evette said to the other receptionist, "We have an appointment with Mademoiselle M. Is everything ready?" She answered in a faint Russian accent. "It is. She is waiting for you in the atrium." "Thank you," Evette said as she guided me from the desk. We walked around the desk into a small door that opened into a huge circular room with unique sculpture all along the walls. Colored lights illuminated the walls, bathing the whole area in a soft and direct light. I saw Elle waiting in the center of the space talking to Bryn. So I walked up to Elle. She turned to me and spoke. We're ready to get your workspace set up for you, sir." Bryn strangely had nothing to say and simply fell in with us as we walked across the atrium to another large space that lay through a set of double doors. Elle pulled a tablet out like she'd used during my first meeting with Lou. Evette left us at the door, so it was just me, Elle, and the suddenly uncharacteristically tight-lipped Bryn. I took a look at the space. It was all matte gray tiling, and the walls had a lot of unique angles, and in the tiling were more or less flat, and the ceiling was arched, almost cathedral-like. From a few slots above, a trio of sunbeams trickled in. All in all, it was eerie and too quiet. "So what can we do for your workspace?" Elle asked simply. I took a minute to take in the huge room, which had as much square footage as both floors of a large house. The first thing is the lighting. It's too dark. Tapping her fingers on the tablet, I looked around as I saw a strange ambient light fill the room. It was warm and soft, like old incandescent bulbs. "How's that?" she asked. It's close, but I'd like to see more color," I answered. More taps on the tablet, and the subtle corners of the ceiling took on a variety of soft hues from blue, green, red, and purple. I looked at the floor and saw how the light played on Elle's white suit and Bryn's platinum blonde hair. I think it was just about perfect. And now? She asked. Much better. Can I have the lighting self-adjust with the time of day? I asked her. Certainly, Elle answered proudly. I'd like cleaner, more white light in the mornings, and by the end of the day I want to see more orange. Midday should be very subtly blue, I instructed. I've always wished for a workspace that had self-adjusting lights, so this was working out very, very well. Anything else concerning the lights? Elle asked. I tried to think of any other considerations. What's that? Why make a big deal about the lights? Well, I can't speak for everyone, but me, when doing artwork, the lighting of the space is very important. For me, it's a lot like the tone of music or the seasoning of food. You don't notice it until it isn't there. Lighting is important to me. In my environment, it helps me relax and concentrate. None right now that I can think of. Elle made a decisive motion on the stylus with her tablet. And the layout, sir? Give me a second to think on this one, I answered. The space was fairly large, but other than an arched ceiling, was basically an empty room. And how many people are going to be in here with me? I asked. We've brought in a team of 6, not including you, Elle said, adjusting her sunglasses slightly. Okay. In that case, I'd like to see 3 alcoves on either side of the space with one large space at the end for me. The middle area should sink into the floor about 2 feet, and each alcove should have a glass across the front, I spouted proudly. Let's see what they did with that. Elle scribbled on with her stylus, making notes for a contractor, I assumed. She tapped the tablet twice and let it hang in her hand and looked around the room. Let's try this. And about here was when I ditched any disbelief about the validity of what these people had and their abilities to wow me. I felt the shudder in the floor, like standing on the world's largest cell phone which had been set to vibrate. There was a groaning that reminded me of steel being bent beyond its tolerance in the walls. The freaking walls changed shape and moved around. It was like watching stop-motion video of Lego buildings being assembled in time-lapse. The difference being the bricks weren't geometric, they were more or less spherical. I watched as the alcoves poured themselves into the space, dividing walls coalescing together in an oddly beautiful show of living architecture. The floor in the middle of the room slowly sank in one soft motion, and I watched the pillars slide from the arched ceiling to abut the alcove dividing walls. At the back, I saw what would become my personal workspace scoop itself from the previously solid stonework. And then nothing. The walls and floor ceased their shifting. I just stood there dumbfounded. I blinked about 90,000 times trying to channel what I should be watching because this was clearly not possible. And yet it had happened, sure as a turn of the earth. Bryn cleared her throat and leaned towards me a little. I know in Britain it's not vogue to leave one's mouth hanging open for long periods of time. Perhaps you should try it? I snapped my mouth shut and smirked a little. I was having a hard time with what I had just seen, but apparently I was the only one, because Elle and Bryn seemed unruffled by the living walls thing. Elle? I stammered. Yes, sir? Explain. She smiled broadly and looked at her tablet approvingly. It's a discipline we've been holding on to for a long time. It took us nearly 20 years just to build this one room. And? I pressed. Bryn rolled her eyes and walked to one of the newly raised pillars that had emerged and pointed at the drab surface and audibly tapped a lacquered nail at an unremarkable spot. Look. I did as she said. I never took my eyes off the spot she indicated as I stalked over to it. It just looked gray and drab, but then I caught a few glints of color sparkle across it. The glints were tiny. I probably would have missed it were it not for the colored light I had just added. As I closed in on the pillar, I noticed it wasn't gray. It was speckled so finely that you couldn't tell it was millions of dots of individual color. Also, it wasn't static. It was moving. I put my hand against it and felt the subtle shift in the texture. It was a bit like putting your hand on an old wooden workbench and very, very slowly moving your hand across it. You could only feel the difference in the wood grain if you moved your hand slowly enough. Otherwise, it felt smooth. It was like that, only backwards, and the wall moved. Not me. What am I looking for? I asked Bryn. She sighed and cocked her head a little and moved around me until she stopped and guided me by the shoulders to just the right spot. There, among the microdots of color and pulsing stone, I saw what she was getting at. The light was catching the subtle curves of the characters from 6 written languages as they throbbed in the stone. I couldn't read any of the letters until, as if Swimming to the surface of a koi pond, I saw a single form of the word change glide across my vision. Something about that was undeniably creepy and explanatory at the same time. I jerked up in surprise. "El? Yes, sir? Explain," I said as I took 3 deliberate strides away from the pillar. Bryn cocked a smile and folded her arms. "As I said, sir, this space is a composite of several techniques and arts we've been the custodians of for some time. This one is a lithoharmony, a sort of stone music," she explained calmly. "Okay, then. Do I have to pay for my trolls and magical creatures, or do they arrive in the mail like samples of Tide?" I remarked. I went for humor because I was at a loss for what else to say. Stone music? My rational brain suddenly felt like scrambled eggs. "It is a very old study, using properties of the written words, masonry and music," Elle added. "And I just work in here like a normal office space. No big deal, just come in every morning with my donuts and living stonework." Yeah, not so much with the rational thought over here," I stammered a bit. "What? See how well you handle it." "Is it not to your liking?" Elle asked, raising her tablet again. "Of course we can make adjustments." I needed a minute to process what I had seen and decided it was best to see what else I could pull out of the Lithoharmony. I would love to play with all the features, but why don't we start with decoration?" Bryn interrupted. "Let's try white floors and black walls, and set with colored panels for each alcove, and then put some indirect lighting in each one. I'd like green marble in mine and a fountain along the back wall." Elle's stylus jotted across the tablet, and the adjustments flowed from us outward. The floors gleamed white, and the walls took on a subdued black gloss. Each alcove took on a separate palette, and I noticed at the far end, my office grew dark red carpeting, and the walls were blue, save for a white stripe about 3 feet wide at about waist height. I'm not feeling the Technicolor walls in my space. I prefer shelving along the 2 side walls. Fractured granite for the front wall on either side of the entrance, I instructed, as I walked down the central space towards the office. "In the back wall?" Elle asked. I could have anything I wanted there, I later learned, but I felt a little more organic and decided against going totally over the top. I'll decorate that myself later." "Very well. Would you like a table or a fountain set in the central area?" she asked. I considered going for broke again, but something stopped me. Still not sure what it was. Sure. A table 4 feet wide, 12 long, preferably red oak, dead center with 10 chairs. That's all for now, I answered. I waited for the table to form, but nothing happened. "Out of gas?" "No, sir. We'll have to have that brought in over lunch. The Lithoharmony doesn't deal in woodwork," Elle pointed out. Given the fantastic nature of this Lithoharmony thing, I was still a little let down by that. It's like getting aboard the Millennium Falcon and finding out it only has a tape deck. Not upsetting, just kind of disappointing. Bryn looked at her phone and glanced at Elle. "Excuse me, I have an appointment." "Oh, of course," Elle said dismissively. "So this is the catalog of the designs we can bring in for you." Elle handed me her tablet and tapped her finger at what, for all intents and purposes, was a furniture catalog of epic proportions. Just highlight what you'd like, and we'll have it brought in by the close of your lunch meeting." "Just like that?" I asked. At this point, my skepticism had taken a sabbatical, and yet there was a layer of imbalance to the whole process I couldn't define. "Is that a problem, sir?" Elle asked, an eyebrow raised above her sunglasses. Was it? I couldn't decide. Well, not in so many words, no, but all I do is go through what looks like a catalog of every piece of furniture crafted in the last 50 years, and you'll have it here at lunch. Doesn't that strike you as peculiar? She did. I lifted the tablet from my hands and again tapped the screen precisely in a few motions. I have limited to exactly the last 50 years, if that will help. She held her tablet out to me again, and my mouth just kind of worked noiselessly for a long second, and then took the tablet in my hands. 50 years only. What was it showing me before? I held my hands up. Don't answer that. Just give me a few minutes to look over what's here. Very well. I'll be just outside if you need me. Evette will be along to collect you for lunch. I'll leave you to it. She explained and turned on a heel and walked out of the space. I took a deep breath and looked at the tablet. I didn't notice before, but it was actually transparent. The image was suspended in a slab of glass the size of a clipboard, but it had just enough illumination to be visible. but not so much that it put out any noticeable light. It was like a combination smartphone screen and graphing calculator screen. I looked at the table displayed in the tablet, a large model inlaid with abalone shell and obsidian tiles. I didn't dare consider what it might cost. My best guess put it as more than a 67 Corvette, but I may never know. I held up the tablet with its picture of the table and was shocked that the image changed, as if I was looking at the table in the exact space within the room. My mouth went a little dry. These people had the most incredible technology I had seen in my life. The usability and intuitive nature of the tablet would have given Steve Jobs an orgasm resulting in an aneurysm. iPad, schmipad. I stood in place, held the tablet up, and watched the table's image superimpose itself into the alcoves and workstations as well as a central area intelligently. The table even replaced by smaller versions of itself when I put into a position too small to accommodate it. I flicked my finger over the tablet's surface and watched as another table did the same. Oh yeah, I was going to have fun with this. I probably spent the next 2.5 straight hours walking around the empty work area with the tablet held in front of my face, looking at various arrangements of tables, chairs, pillars, shelves, lamps, cabinets, you name it. The outside observer, it really must have looked quite bizarre. And for some reason, all I could think was that if IKEA ever got a hold of this gizmo, the world was doomed. Time flew by. I'm not usually huge on interior decorating, and I have a tendency towards a pseudo-modern, tastefully minimalist approach, but given the tools at hand, I ended up going for old-world archival decoration. Combined with the illumination and design sensibility you might find in a modern art gallery space. This juxtaposition was unintentional, but it nonetheless felt perfectly natural, considering the oddly old but modern feeling I got from Pantheon by and large. I was in the midst of shuffling through a pair of onyx sculptures for the entryway to my office when I heard the door close behind me. "Having fun?" Evette said, with a slight smile across her face. I gestured to the tablet. "This has to be one of the most impressive things I've ever seen." "You're the first person to use it in this way," she said. "We were hoping you would like it." And there we go again with the cryptic. Why am I the first one? "It's time for lunch. Lou and the others are waiting for you." She skimmed past my question. She was freaky good at doing that. "You are running 10 minutes late?" "No, I'm not." I looked at my watch and realized it was still set to LA time. Probably like I was. Oh. She took the tablet out of my hand, set it on a waist-high shelf along one of my walls, and smiled slightly. "You're more than a little necessary when the meeting is for you to meet your team." "I suspect so," I answered glibly. We walked out of the space, which was now looked more like a citadel or temple of some impressive dynasty or ideology.